Hello, and welcome to the Brick and Mortar Detroit podcast, where we discuss business, real estate, lifestyle, and travel. I'm your host, Eric Andrews, founder and owner of Brick and Mortar Detroit Real Estate Brokerage. I started this podcast for boots on the ground insights from not just one, but as many industry professionals that I could find. Today's guest is Danielle Biehl. Hey, Danny. Thanks for coming on.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Wonderful. Thank you. And why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I have been in the customer service industry probably for about 15 years now. So a mix of, starting out working as a waitress, when I was a teenager, going from, retail clothing stores. And then my last actual sales and customer service job was actually an insurance agent. I was at for a few years for specifically State Farm. So that, with all those different experiences, I feel like my customer service knowledge is quite vast, with just different avenues that I've been able to work in, throughout my life. And more recently now landing in title insurance, that's kind of helped me, kind of grow my experience a little bit more, grow my industry knowledge and, my curiosity really. So title is a very interesting business with that, being in the real estate game.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Mhm.
I'm actually really excited to hear about it because when you told me you were entitled, I'm like, perfect, because there's so many things that I don't even know. And I'm a real estate agent. And I'm sure that other people have similar questions and like curiosity. So you're gonna give us a rundown today. And I'm hoping that we can definitely learn quite a bit today from you. So are you from Detroit?
So I'm not. I'm actually newly Detroit native, I guess I should say, as I've been here for the past probably about 10 years now. I, went to MSU and that's where I met my now husband.
Go
And
green.
yeah, go white, a lot of my friends and family. And then I actually ended up getting my business degree out of Cleary University. So, I've gotten all my education out of Michigan, I've, met my love of my life here, my best friends are here, my family's here. So it's really become a home of mine and I really love it here. And I couldn't imagine going back to Chicago, but don't tell anybody that.
Well, everybody's gonna know soon, but we'll keep it between me and you.
We'll wait till it goes live and then I'll have my
Exactly. And so how exactly did you find your way into the title, game, I guess we can call it?
Um, honestly, by a stroke of luck. I mean, really, I was feeling really frustrated and just bent out in the current industry that I was in. In being in sales, it's hard, I mean, you're marketing yourself, as well as the
Mm,
product that you're standing, behind. And,
mm,
sometimes you really have to believe in that product. And personally, for me, being in the insurance industry, particularly auto, life, health insurance is what
mm,
I was doing. It's a very competitive business,
mm,
extremely competitive. And so with me, I was just having a very hard time, finding ways to be successful there. So I just needed to branch out. So, I started to look into other avenues in the insurance industry, in retail, things that I understood and knew. And honestly, I got a call from Real Estate One, which is a big realtor brand here in Michigan, and they actually had a title insurance company, Capital Title, which I currently work for. And so, yeah, it really just fell into my lap. I mean, they looked at my experience, they looked at my knowledge, and they were like, we really think that you could be a really big asset in our company.
mm, mm. Wow, it did just fall in your lap, huh?
It really did.
Gotcha. So I mean, it sounds like you really like it.
I do. I love it. It's very different. It's different from anything that I've ever done before. It's it's more specific, I guess, in where, when I was working in a kitchen, you're selling food. So it's like people come in when they're hungry, kind of thing.
Mhm,
It's very easy business. But with this, it's referral based. Like our agents are our customers, they're our clients. And so we really have to embody their wants and their needs and,
mm,
project that to their clients, which are the buyers, the sellers. And we really have to embody that experience and,
mm,
make them look good. So if they look good, we look good. So it's,
mm.
it's a partnership.
Awesome, awesome.
Mhm.
So, okay, so for people who don't really know what a title company is, can you just give us like a general layman's term rundown for what a title company is?
Yeah, I mean, basically, it's a service that you can use if you buy or sell a house. We pull current and past deeds. We'll make sure all outstanding liens are paid for, your mortgages, your taxes, any water. So it just makes things very easy in that
Mm.
process. A lot of people don't know what they're doing when they're buying or selling a home. There's so much that you have to know, and a lot of things are behind the scenes. So it's like you don't even actually know that it's happening. It's just being given to you. Um,
Yes.
so I think with that, it's really important to go through a company that understands that stuff and is actually looking out for you. There are a lot of private sales that people will do without going through a company that can actually read through those things and do it legally.
Absolutely.
It's there's a lot of risk involved when people try to do that stuff themselves.
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. I always use a title company. I've never done a deal without a title company. And I usually explain it to like my buyers or sellers as, a trusted middle person that you
Mhm.
essentially can allow to facilitate the deal contractually and not really leave it to one side of the deal or the other side of the deal kind of taking control, because as soon as bad blood gets in, or you guys have a disagreement, or you're not sure if you can trust them to really do everything that they need and should be doing properly. And so a title company, that's never a worry. I've never really had a situation with a title company where I felt as if they were going to like play us, or, sway or feel like they're working more so for the seller or the buyer, or whatever it may be. So I highly, highly, highly recommend a title company. And so what exactly is your title?
So specifically for me, at my company, we have very unique titles at our companies just to kind of set us apart from everyone else. So my role would be a lender liaison, level two. So that being basically, I'm that go between for the lender and the agent, and then even the client sometimes, because we all love our loan officers and our brokers, but sometimes they just as soon as the deal gets closer, they forget who their customer is.
Oh yeah.
Like it's
Oh
just
yeah.
like they're like, oh, what's their name again? What day they're closing? They only care when their check is showing up. So with that, we give them more a human, person to deal with,
Mm,
somebody they don't have to call, especially when you're dealing with, Rocket Mortgage, Chase Bank, Bank of America. You're calling like a 1-800 number just to ask a simple question. So,
exactly.
we're that in between to try to, get that contact for you, get that information that you need, let you know your final figure, let you know how much to make your check out to, so you're not doing too much of that process trying to get in charge, contact with your loan officer, your agent. We're that person that you can contact and get all those questions answered.
Awesome. Awesome.
Mhm.
And so, like, what's your day to day like? How would you characterize your day to day?
Man, so my office is lucky enough that we have at least 2 to 3 closings a day. And a lot of those are mortgage closings. Lucky for me is, I work with a lot of lenders and brokers. So balancing numbers, preparing documents for closing, printing checks, dispersing wires, making sure people get their copy packages, their property transfer documents, explaining the process of filing those. Um, ordering payoffs, water bills, just all that stuff that you need to do, to get to that closing. Even sometimes we're setting up DocuSign, now in the days of COVID, people are able to e-sign things now. So, we're setting up full DocuSign packages and sending them out, for closing. So,
Exactly.
yeah, just a variety of things. It's like anything to get it done.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, are there any misconceptions you think that most people have about what title companies do, or anything like that?
Honestly, it's such a specific industry that I think unless you are in the industry yourself, not many people know what we're doing, which is just so incredible to me because, people don't understand that you can choose a title company. I mean, really, there's so many different title companies out there. And so it's funny, we get a lot of calls, a day asking for, car title insurance. So I
Mm,
think that's like the biggest thing that, people think we do. They think we
mm.
do car title. And it's like, no, 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 real estate title is very different. It's like if you had about an hour, we can sit down and talk to you about what, like real estate title can do for you. So yeah, I think the biggest misconception is that people just don't know. They have no idea unless you buy a house, people say, oh yeah, I think I went through a title company. It's like, you for sure went through a title company when you bought your house.
Yeah, especially if you have a mortgage, you definitely probably
Yeah,
went through a title.
but people just have no idea. It's like, it's so in the background, they didn't even know they were sitting at a title company's office for their closing.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And so overall, I guess, what are some of the caveats of not using a title company? Is anything come to mind that, or that you see more often than not than, people are trying to fix problems that they've created by not using a title company, or what you got?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, especially, unfortunately with, the Detroit properties, there's a lot of tax title that happens out there. And that's where things get really messy, just determining, where interest lies. There are people that still, especially when you're doing the, oh, I just signed this quitclaim deed over to my brother, so he can have this. It's not as easy as that,
Mhm.
because then one day you're going to say, hey, I own part of that property, and then when somebody is trying to buy it 3 times over, it's like you still have interest in that house, and that's going to ruin somebody's day if you're going to try to come and collect.
Yeah.
So it's very it's easier to cut the ties, and that's what the title companies offer for you. They give you that guarantee that nobody's going to be able to come back and say, hey, somebody quit claim that to me 3 years ago. I should be getting, 10,000 of that sale. It keeps things clean. It, makes people guaranteed, that it's like you own this property, and that, you can do it to your will. You can sell it, you can buy it, you can rent it. Yeah, so I like that satisfaction, for the clients that, they don't have to worry about anybody coming to try to take their properties from them.
Yeah. And it's like you said, in Detroit, that is a big, big, big problem. There were a lot of people, or at least are a lot of people that I've dealt with in the past. And there have been some transactions I just could not take because when I first started doing it, we would do a lot of pre-title. A lot of agencies don't do that anymore. Do you guys do
Yeah.
pre-title?
Hmm.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
you
Like,
can get all the way to the end of the deal only to find out that there's a ton of things that need to be fixed on a title, or we're not really sure who owns the property, or maybe, it needs to be quiet title or whatever it may be. And so you need to use a title company. There was one guy I talked to last year or a few years ago, and he had the deed or didn't know where the deed was or something like that. It had never been recorded, but his dad gave him the house and like stuff like that. And now he couldn't sell the house. He didn't want the house, but he couldn't even sell it. Or there was so many hurdles that he had to go through. And maybe for the house that he was trying to sell, it was probably a little bit more costly than selling the house itself. So,
for sure. Yeah.
you get jammed up, with those types of things. So you always need a professional. You always need someone who has that expertise, and you always need to be able to have some guidance. And that's why you use a realtor. That's why you use a title insurance company. It's why you talk to a loan officer, because they all have their expertise in those
Exactly.
particular areas. And so title insurance for sure. And so like, what exactly is like typical title insurance? What does it consist of?
So you could have two different types of policies. There's an owner's policy for basically for those that sell, buy or sell the home. So if
Mm,
you're a buyer, then essentially you're going to be given an owner's policy as the new owner on the property. So it basically would display any outstanding liens, anything that needs to be taken care of before closing, recording of the deed, paying off of any mortgages, paying of any taxes, outstanding water. If there's an HOA, because HOAs can put liens on your property as well too. If you don't pay those fines, they're very powerful.
oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Stuff like that. So, you get an owner's policy when you purchase a home. So that basically is your policy that certifies we have clear title on this property.
Mm,
There is nothing outstanding, everything, all O's are crossed, T's and I's dotted, all of that fun stuff. So you're certified that if there is some type of claim, if there was some type of water bill that was outstanding and ended up rolling out to $10,000, or if there was some type of taxes that went delinquent, you can file a claim against that policy, against us basically for not doing our due diligence. There's a loan policy for the lender. So if you ever take out a mortgage, the lender actually gets a policy which certifies essentially the same thing. Title was clear, there's no outstanding obligations, that they can force, they can do a foreclosure on the mortgage if they feel free. If there aren't any payments being made, basically they have ownership on that home against their mortgage.
gotcha. And how long do these policies last?
For the lifetime of the home, as long as you own it. So it has to be the respective parties that, still own the home. Once that transaction is, sold or, sent to another party, then you'll have to get a new policy to replace that.
Gotcha. And so I may have asked a similar question already, but I kind of like to ask questions that are similar because I always get a different answer. So what do you wish the general public knew about title companies?
So I wish that they knew how much work we do. Like there's a lot. You have to go through the different municipalities, to collect, information on these properties. You have to try to pull, as many deeds and quit claim recordings as you can. And the biggest thing that we have to explain to people, like you said, if it's not recorded, we don't know. We can't assume, like there one customer that you had, that your dad quit claimed this to you and that he went and got it recorded at the city of Detroit. There's no way for us to know unless it's actually showing up on record. And if it's not showing up on record, then unfortunately our hands are tied.
Absolutely.
We can only go within the constraints of the law. We can't make assumptions and we can't act like attorneys. We do have attorneys, thankfully, but it's just like you said, those things can get really muddled and it can really hold off the transaction. Or even, there are situations where we can't close transactions as there's just too much mud in the water and we can't guarantee somebody a clear title.
Exactly. And so what is the process of like researching just a simple title? What does that consist of? I know you said there are different municipalities and different things that you do, but like what is kind of the step-by-step process to the best of your ability?
So basically, it really depends if there's a homeowners insurance, homeowners association. Basically, we start calling with the HOA because unfortunately, HOAs, they are very slow to produce information. They love to knock on your door and ask for their money, but when you're asking them for an invoice or some type of confirmation of how much our buyer is going to have to pay coming into your complex, that can take up into a month. It's like so I think it's like dealing with the different companies and their different avenues of how they like to work with title companies, which sometimes isn't very helpful. But with that, we will run, we pull deeds on the property. We try to get the most recent deeds, at least 12 months on the property, if not longer. We try to get any copies of mortgages that are still outstanding on the property, just so we know how they took title, when they took out a mortgage, the constraints of the mortgage, if there is a mortgage at all. We try to see if there are any certificate of trust. If it's an LLC, we have to get operating agreements. If there are, sellers that have deceased, we have to get death certificates. So there are a lot of different things that we have to secure depending on what is pertinent to the property, who owns the property. So there are relocation deals that we have to do as well too. So if somebody is relocating from another state or even another country, there are different things that we have to gather for that type of, transaction. So yeah, it's, the sky's the limit. It's,
I can imagine.
Right. We are that hub basically. And like you said, every realtor should go through a title company. So, we are the ones that specialize in what you should do, when you have a purchaser, when you have a seller, how to get that to close.
Oh yeah, you definitely want some type of guarantee for like that you own your house or that someone doesn't have interest in your house or something like that. I never understand why it's even a question for most people. Why play that game, especially if it's not going to cost you any money? Like if I'm not mistaken, sellers usually pay for the title insurance if you're a buyer. So unless otherwise,
exactly.
agreed,
That's a great way, and that's another thing too, a misconception. A lot of people think it's expensive going through a title company, and not necessarily. It's flat fees. We charge you one flat fee. A lot of other fees are just, county fees and, things that you have to pay just to sell your house. It's, transfer taxes, honestly, are the worst,
Right. Right.
You can blame the state for that.
And so, for instance, for people who don't know, what are transfer taxes?
So basically that's a cost that you pay, there's a county and state, I think when you equal it together, it's like $8.10 per thousand,
Mhm.
basically is what the state requires us to charge for you to sell a house. It's a fixed amount. So, a lot of people try to shop around different title companies, see, I'm going to get a break on my transfer taxes. Unfortunately, we're all working on the same calculator. So, it's like I said, you can blame the state of Michigan for, that cost, but it's a fixed cost. Same with, an owner's policy. That's based off of the sales price. Loan policy is based off the loan price. So there's a lot of fixed costs here, that are just already built into the transaction. So you don't really have to worry about, being nickel and dimed extra, for using a title company. It's all built in.
Exactly. And I used to think that they were like percentages, and like my first few deals, I'm like, man, these closing costs are, you're right. I looked at well, it's the Alta now. I used to call it the HUD.
Right.
I would look at it and I'm like, oh, it's pretty straight to the point. And so, yeah, it's like, use it. It's definitely worth your time, especially since you get that like kind of lifetime guarantee as long as everything's done properly. And so how do you feel about split title?
Honestly, it's a new thing now.
Mm.
COVID, I feel like it's been around for sure. I feel like pre-COVID, it didn't happen as much. People kind of like to keep it with the same title companies just for, disbursement purposes. People want to get keys at the table, they want to get their checks at the table, their copies and all that without having to wait for another party to finish signing,
Sure.
which I fully understand. But COVID has really changed that a lot. We have a lot of true split closings now, which is, same time, same, different location, is kind of how things are happening now, because people just don't want to be in the same room with each other anymore. It used to be, they just didn't like each other, or just, which is fine. We still have that happen, but now it's the whole like contagion aspect. So,
Sure.
oh, I'm autoimmune compromised. I have a baby. Everybody has their own story as to why they can't close in the same room.
Yes.
So that's been and with everybody being at different locations now, it's like there's two different title companies involved in every transaction. And that's added a different element for sure to the business, because you're usually working, with your own title company or just on your own. So I think it adds more to that whole customer service aspect, because, not only do I have to be, customer service to, my agent and to their clients, but I also to the other title company, because we're working for a similar goal. So, we got to be friends here. Otherwise, it's going to be a problem.
Yeah, no, I've always been, when I first found out about a split closing, I'm like, wow. And I started using it almost all the time. Mainly for me, it was prior to COVID, but it was mainly because I had a couple of deals, or a lot of deals, where I would find the agent to be unprofessional. And oftentimes then their title company won't really do much unless things are signed off on and blah, blah, blah. But the person generally to facilitate the other side is the other agent. And so I like to use title companies that I'm familiar with. I've talked to the people, I've used the people before. And again, they can't do anything illegal, but that familiarity also, when I'm recommending them to my client or whatever it may be, I feel a little bit more confident that our deal might go smoothly or more smooth, because we're using, a title company that I am familiar with. But a lot of agents, I don't like split closings. I can tell when I do them. And if I'm not mistaken, really the only time you can't do one is if it's a cash deal.
That is correct.
Okay.
The list side, they automatically take both sides of the transaction when you're doing a cash deal.
Yes. Gotcha.
Yeah.
And so what do you wish most agents knew about using title companies, or just title companies in general?
The more information, the better. Like, we are not psychic.
You're not? Because I thought that you were.
Right. We do these transactions all the time, but everyone is different. We can't assume that, a trustee, has a certificate of trust. Not everybody does. I mean, they don't even know where it is, but they know they have a trust somewhere, So it's just, you got to set us up for success, because It's like, if you give us the information, then we can make it happen,
Exactly.
And honestly, like timeliness is a thing. I mean, we got a lot of different transactions, we got a lot of deals, we got a lot of customers that we're trying to make happy. And a 24-hour closing is not going to set us up for success, and it's not going to set you up for success. So
Oh no.
it's just, I mean, we embody, as much as you give us. So it's like, if if you're going to give us a, LLC that's, trying to sell their property tomorrow and they have a lender, it's like, that's going to be a very rough closing,
And so what, for my knowledge more so, I mean, other people can learn too, but so what is the biggest problem with an LLC with a lender?
It's just, there are a lot of things that you have to get. There are operating agreements that you have to get. There are different signers that you have to approve and make sure that they're authorized to sign on behalf of the LLC.
Mm.
A lot of LLCs now, they come up overnight and they like to flip houses. So then you got sworn statements and lien waivers that you got to call on. And,
Mm.
honestly, contractors don't like to call people back. So it's like, you got to give us at least 2 to 3 days, to call the same guy over and over again.
Yeah, I do know
Right.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. And mechanics lien is a big deal. They can put a lien on a house for up to a year. So it's just, there are processes that we have to go through. And if you give us that time and you give us the information that we need, then I mean, we can rock it out,
Yeah.
but that's where you get things that are, gonna make things a little more of a struggle, and it's going to make the title company seem like, oh, they don't really know what they're doing, but I mean, sometimes these things take time. If you
Oh,
have
yeah.
a Detroit property and it's tax title, you got to go and file for a FOIA package over at the city. I mean, you got to think about how long that stuff takes,
Yeah, and that takes, if I'm not mistaken, that can take 2 weeks to a month, if not longer, right?
Oh, for sure. And it depends on how much is on that property. Some of them aren't too bad, but a lot of them have a lot of history on them that haven't been cleaned up. So,
Mm.
it's just, you really have to understand the type of property that you're approaching the title company with, and, give them that time to sort it through.
Absolutely, absolutely. And generally, like for a general process, like I don't know, conventional FHA, what's comfortable? I know a lot of people do like maybe 30 to 45 days to close. If it's cash, we're talking 2 weeks. But if it's cash, what do you think is comfortable if it's a pretty normal deal for a title company, rather?
Um, yeah, cash deals really aren't bad. Those are great to be
Mhm.
honest, because on a cash deal, I mean, you can e-sign everything.
Mm. Wow.
Realistically, there are some notary documents, that you can send to the seller, but that's an easy FedEx. Send them over FedEx. They can secure their own notary. We can get a notary for you. I mean, a
Yeah.
seller closing fee for us is only $100. So,
Okay.
and and I mean, that includes us sending the FedEx, getting it back. If you want the notary, we'll get that for you as well. So that's like an all encompassing service. And those are pretty easy just because you don't really have to come to the closing for that to happen. People are wiring in their money and then we're wiring, the proceeds back out. So I think those transactions are pretty smooth and easy, just for the fact of, not having that in-person aspect, and less documentation, definitely, because you're not dealing with the lender mortgage documents, which I mean, those are 120 pages plus. So, so that, should definitely add some time. And those closings are for notaries. To hire those notaries for those type of closings are more expensive, definitely, because, they have to be more versed in the mortgage documents and how to explain those if the customers has any questions, stuff like that. So I'll definitely say the cash deals are less lengthier, less documentation. But I mean, the mortgage loans are great too. I mean, FHA, conventional, I mean, they're basically all the same. It's just a matter of what documents are included versus what are not. But honestly, I think the beauty of the beast there is what lender you're working with, because every lender is going to come in, different shapes and, forms, and, some are way better than others, definitely, in their,
Facts.
you already know, in their timeliness and, how they make their promises and how they live up to it. So I think that's the biggest thing. Once you get a team, that, like you said, like you have your title company that you're familiar with, you have your loan officer, that knows the business, and you have your real estate agent. Once you kind of have that group, that's the trifecta. It's just like you got your people working for you, they know what they're doing, and that's the beauty, in the
Gotcha.
business.
Gotcha. And so For FHA or conventional, what do you think is comfortable for a title company? 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks?
I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, we can turn around. It's really the lenders. Like that's the thing. I mean, and honestly, I mean, clear to close is becoming faster and faster
Okay.
lately. I mean, it's just COVID has just added such a spin, to the
Mhm.
game.
Mhm.
And I mean, I've seen files, I've gotten PAs and I've seen them close. I mean, within a month. It's incredible. I mean, you get your appraisals, people have them out in a few days. I mean, honestly, I would say, yeah, maybe within 3 weeks to a month, you can sign a purchase agreement and then be at the closing table.
Gotcha. And is it
Yeah.
a VA loan any different? Are there more documents, less documents, or is it about the same time
Um,
frame, about the
It
same
kind
process?
of depends on the lender. Some lenders are going to have a little bit thicker, VA loans than others.
Okay.
But realistically, it's just a little different. You have like the pest inspection that you have to include, when your purchase agreement, when you're going through a VA, basically. They don't usually let there's compliance fee waivers and stuff like that you have, they kind of have given the little goodies here and there, for being a veteran, which is, those loans are very nice. Um, but yeah, I mean, and sometimes you'll have some forms in there that the seller has to sign, so, but yeah, it's really just, I mean, every loan is going to be slightly different from the
Sure.
other, but
Sure.
even with the slight differences, it's barely noticeable.
Hmm. Now, what
Mhm.
about FIRPTA?
So FIRPTA's fun. We
Mhm.
had a lot of FIRPTA this COVID,
Sure.
because we had a lot of, sellers that owned property left the country and weren't able to come back.
Yes.
So, and that opened up actual virtual closings for us as well too. So it's called R.O.N. I don't know if you've heard of it, the remote online notary.
Mm.
So that is an option now that we have as well for sellers that can't come in person, that are in another country. We have an option for them to sign a deed electronically,
Hmm.
which is just, yeah, it's
That's
just so,
new.
yeah, it's huge. So, lenders do have to agree to it. And most of them will. I mean, it's sanctioned by the underwriters, it's sanctioned by the state of Michigan.
Mm.
So it's pretty foolproof at this point. And we've been doing it since the start of COVID. So,
Gotcha.
almost about a year now at this point consistently. So yeah, I mean, that's added a different spin. But FIRPTA it's a very interesting part of the real estate transaction. It's one of those things where like you go through it in your questions, a seller, a US citizen, most of the time you just get yes, 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 then you get that one no. And then all of a sudden it's like, God, what do we do?
Mm.
It's just like everybody panic.
Mm.
But honestly, FIRPTA isn't that bad. It basically is, we have to hold taxes because basically, the people that own these property, they really aren't paying taxes on them.
Sure.
So we have to hold an amount of taxes for the IRS, as the IRS is always going to collect. So we have to hold between, six to, I think it's 10 to 15%. It kind of depends on the sales price of the home, but 10 to 15% we're going to hold from the seller proceeds. Essentially that goes to the IRS. From there, they do their calculating, they take back whatever they want, and then they'll give you back whatever they think they don't need. So it's really that simple. I think a lot of people get really shook about FIRPTA because it's like a 6-page form. You got to add your social number to it. I mean, there's a bunch of questions that you got to answer, and it just seems so nerve-wracking. But
Oh yeah.
honestly, it's just the IRS just making sure they get their cut.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And for anybody that doesn't know, I forget exactly, but I think it's foreign investments. I'll just have you do it. Person, transaction, or act, or whatever. But I'll have you
Yeah.
use the acronyms because it's been a while.
Yeah, so honestly, I'm like blanking at because we use FIRPTA all the time. I think it's foreign investments, real estate, transaction. Think I'm trying to think. I'm like I'm missing the A.
No, don't feel bad. Foreign investment in real property tax act.
Oh, real property. Okay, there you go.
Yeah. So for a lot of foreigners, this is something that you'll have to deal with, and a lot of times they don't even know that it exists, especially if it's their first transaction,
Well,
and they're
that's
like, "What?"
Yeah, it's such a behind the scenes thing, honestly.
Mhm.
It's like we're just holding 10 or 15% from your proceeds, and then we're cutting a check to the IRS, and then you're just going to get something in the mail later saying, hey, thank you for paying your taxes.
Exactly.
It's just so seamless. And
Oh
I
yeah.
think, a lot of people, even with the title itself, I don't even really remind myself of what FIRPTA is called, because it doesn't sound as scary as, name makes it seem. It's really
Right. Right, exactly. I've had people for a while, was selling a lot of houses for people who didn't live in the country.
Mhm.
And some of them just did not love it. They did not like it. They didn't know it existed, but they didn't want anyone to hold any of their money. I had one person, I don't remember
Get
the
it.
exact instance, but this is actually a little bit different. But they started a LLC, like, I don't know, it wasn't in a timely manner, and they decided to, or they hadn't started the LLC yet. They decided to have a check cut to this LLC. And then the bank was like, well, it could be a year before we can even cash this. I think he was foreign. I think he had just started an LLC. And it's just like, there's so much that you don't know about. It makes sense to get with your agent early, get with their title company early, and start asking questions and getting an idea of what you might be looking at, so that, the day of, when you think you're going to take all this money. Sorry, my camera does that sometimes. But anyway,
No worries.
you're like, all this money, and then you have to like either have some of it withheld, or create new expenses for yourself. So just start talking to the people early on, when you're talking about selling your house, or before you put it on the market, or during that process. This is a really good time to start talking to people and getting a idea of what you might be looking at, so you can plan accordingly. Maybe it wasn't the greatest idea for him to use an LLC that time, but he figured it out. But he definitely, it took him some time, and it's hard to figure things out when you don't live in that state or the country. So just a thought, and has nothing to do with that, but yeah, since we're talking about stuff, put it
Well, for
out there.
sure, but 100%. I mean, I've had, even just, people from Canada, and for you think that Canada is so close, but they're not US citizens.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
even with that, I mean, you have to have a US bank account in order to deposit, proceeds from
Yes.
a US transaction.
Yes.
So and that's another factor people don't understand. We can't wire to a foreign bank account. We can, like, you cannot deposit our check into a foreign bank account.
Right. Oh,
Uh,
that was what happened. Yes, yes,
yeah,
yes. Yeah.
yeah.
He
So that's
couldn't
what
deposit it.
I'm leading to. Yeah, that's what I thought you were getting to, because I'm like, yeah, that's a big problem. Like you can go all the way up to selling the house, and then you have all this money, and it's like, what are you going to do with it? So
Right.
like,
Just a check, or just something sitting there, and like, this, what can be worse than that? Like, oh, I've got $1 million or 500,000 or a couple $100,000, and I can't touch it. Right. I have to wait.
right?
You've been waiting
Oh,
this money
exactly.
all this time.
Yeah, so that's why it's really important to have those conversations and figure out, do I need to open up a bank account? Do I need to, how long do I need to keep it open? And then how do I get those funds over, to Ireland or England or,
Yep.
so, yeah, those are
Yep.
very important things.
So it sounds like with COVID, things actually might have sped up a little bit, and really aren't really being held up like they used to be. I was going to ask, like, have you noticed a big change? And I still will, but it seems like things are actually moving a little bit quicker.
They are
Hmm.
very quick. Like I said, with the closings, they're very quick. Even with the clear to closes, I mean, they're coming super fast. We're having next day closings. We have lenders now that are starting to allow some e-signing
Hmm.
to an extent, which is pretty new. Michigan is a wet sign state though. So, the mortgage, those notary docs, you still have to sign in person. But I
Yes.
mean, realistically, those were like 10 documents, out of like 100. I
Hmm.
mean, we've had a lot of closings set up where people will come in, sign their 10 documents, go home, and then e-sign the rest of them.
Hmm.
So yeah, it makes things very seamless. I refinanced, and my lender did a hybrid closing, is what we're calling them now. So I did all of my wet sign documents in person, and then I e-signed everything else the morning of my closing.
That's awesome. That's good to
Yeah.
know. It's some kind of a little concerning that there's so many clear to closes so fast, but
Yeah.
I'm not gonna go there. But short of that, that's good. Um,
It is. It is. I mean, TRID doesn't really exist anymore. It's kind of one of those things where people like to be like, oh, does TRID still apply? And I'm like, I couldn't tell you when it starts or when it ends. I don't know. It's like the close. too fast.
And real quick, just define TRID for people who don't know what TRID is.
So basically it's the truth in lending, basically. So the idea that you have to have a 3-day window to close. So that gives the buyer the right to look over their documents, their pre-disclosure, make any changes or decisions, or even rescind if they want to. So that this is that 3-day period that everybody has, that's like holding your breath, right before the closing. So you get there clear to close and you can sign at the table.
Gotcha. So I know you're not from Detroit, so I'm going to let you answer this however you want to answer it. But what is your craziest Detroit story, or your craziest Chicago story, or your craziest story in general? Or if you don't have any of those, your most embarrassing story, if you'd like to share that. Do you have any?
Oh boy.
I'm sure you got at least one.
I was going to say, I mean, you just can put a camera on me and you can just see embarrassment daily. So that's like, honestly. But I would say one of the coolest things that have happened to me when I was in Chicago. So the bridges come up there. If you're on the main bridge along Lakeshore Drive there, that bridge comes up. I have never seen it come up in my lifetime but once when I was a kid, there was a boat that was actually coming through. It was just one of those emergency situations. I don't think anybody knew it was coming through. We're on a school bus on the bridge, and they actually had to lift the bridge while we were on it. And so it was wild.
How does that work? Did you slide down, or how does that work?
You put your emergency brake on.
Okay.
So they warned everyone, put your emergency brake on, because they only had to lift it up enough for the boat through. Yeah, those higher ones. So they had just enough for the sail to get through. But it was wild. I didn't even know the thing could raise. What
is happening?
Right. It's this big bridge, and you're just like, whoa, oh my God, and you're a kid and you're on the school bus and you're like, oh my God, this is awesome.
Right. So, kids. Right. Me on the other hand, as an adult, oh my God, what is this? And kids are like,
and
this is so cool.
I drive past it all the time now, and I'm like, if this thing ever lifts off while in my adult years, no, there's no way. I couldn't survive. I gotta pass out.
Gotcha. Well, that was a good one. That was definitely a good one. All right. Well, we got a quick word from our sponsors. Is work or real estate getting you down? Are you feeling burned out or depressed? Well, there's a solution you can use right from the comfort and privacy of your own home computer. Center for Establishing Recovery is Metro Detroit's leading provider for e-therapy. If you're in need of a listening ear, contact Center for Establishing Recovery at establishingrecovery.com. Again, that website, establishingrecovery.com. If you have a question or topic you're interested in having us discuss, or interested in coming on as a guest, advertising, real estate services, or sponsoring an episode, go to brickandmortardetroit.com/podcast. Again, that website, brickandmortardetroit.com/podcast. Danny, is there anything else you'd like to share or promote before we end? Links, socials, where can people find you? This is your time.
Well, I work for Real Estate One is the hub. So we encompass, realtors. We encompass an insurance company. We have Capital Title, of course, that I work under. If you ever want to come and find me, I am on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. I am on Instagram. Definitely come and look for me. Capital Title is the insurance, title insurance company that I work for. So we would love, to have your business, try to transaction with us if you'd like. We are here, we are in Michigan, and we're happy to help.
Awesome. Well, that's it for today. You've been listening to the Brick and Mortar Detroit podcast, where we discuss business, real estate, lifestyle, and travel. I'm your host, Eric Andrews, founder and owner of Brick and Mortar Detroit Real Estate Brokerage. I started this podcast for boots on the ground insights from not just one, but as many industry professionals that I could find. As always, don't just dream, build your dream. Follow us on Instagram at Brick and Mortar DET. For everything else, brickandmortardetroit.com/podcast. Brick and Mortar Detroit podcasts and newsletters reflect the opinions of only the authors who are associated guests of podcasts and do not reflect the views of Brick and Mortar Detroit LLC or any of its subsidiaries or affiliates. They are for informational purposes only and are not a recommendation of an investment strategy or to buy or sell any home, security, or asset in any market. They are also not research reports and are not intended to serve as the basis for any investment decision. Any third-party information provided therein does not reflect the views of Brick and Mortar Detroit LLC or any of their subsidiaries or affiliates. All investments involve risk, including the loss of money, principal, and past market performance does not guarantee future results. We always recommend you enlist a professional entity for any investment decision you may be considering.